Grab now.
They're so split up.
Hey, what's up guys, this is Liam or Weagle on your Overwatch, back with a new video. Today we're going to be talking our favourite cowboy McCree. Since he got his flashbang buff and also his buff to high noon a couple of months ago, he's now come back into at least the matchmaking meta in a big way. He's a great pick on certain maps, positions and with certain team comps, and the fact that you can now stop someone in their tracks and much more easily get the kill on them has made him a great hero to play. Now we've covered aiming, crosshairs, accuracy in the past in many different variations, and I'll link videos like that in the description. In this video, I want to talk specifically more about his play style and his positioning, because McCree is seen as a big, heavy aim hero where you got to be hitting these flick shots, headshots all the time, but to actually prop yourself up for that is something that a lot of people struggle with, and it's a very fundamental part of his kit. Before we get into things though, I want to talk a little bit about philosophy, because McCree does need space to hit shots or else it becomes a very difficult time for him. For example, if dive tanks are in your face all the time, you're never going to be able to hit them crispy headshots that you need to. However, if you can position yourself away from the dive tanks in a way that your tanks are creating space for you, that's the dream situation that you want to be in. So you want to be able to set up on high ground or be to an off angle where you can hit shots. But then there becomes this really weird balance and dynamic, which I'll show you guys in a minute, of not overcommitting too much either. If you go on mad flanks all the time as McCree, then it's easy to isolate you and you just become a feed for the enemy team to build their ults off of. So there's this very honed and focused part for McCree that you have to be careful with positioning. And the final thing is also team composition. Deathball's back a little bit, so having a Reinhardt now is great for your McCree to be sitting in the back line to flash things if they dive in. But if you're running him in more of a divey setup, which I generally don't recommend, you're going to be wanting to play him on defense mostly, because it's easy for him to set up positioning on high ground. But I'm also going to show you some great attack situations where you can utilize him too. As always guys, there's going to be Masters and Grandmasters gameplay throughout this video, and the first clip is on Horizon, the notorious Horizon. The second point can be very tough to take. You'll see that I was actually playing Tracer originally and I couldn't get the kills quick enough. Me and my team weren't really setting up properly around this point. It can be a very difficult one to take because the enemy spawns so close to that point. So I went in with Tracer, I got loads of kills, but as Tracer I couldn't get them kills quick enough, and when we did get them kills I wasn't set up in a place to be able to then follow up on more damage as they trickled out of spawn. So what I actually decided to do here was take McCree instead, and this is very important because in the first fight with McCree I made the mistake of going to the high ground, trying to get picks, and then going to the low ground, and it actually put me in a similar situation to what Tracer did as well, where I was so far into the fight that it was easier for the enemies to retake. What the enemies want on this point is to be able to come back in and dive you and trickle out forever. But what happens in the next fight is what you should be doing as McCree, and that is taking up some strong positioning that the enemy team will struggle to dedicate to countering. Because the enemy team have to dive onto the point here to stop us capping it, well, I can stand on the high ground and just deal out damage all day. For this exact reason, McCree is nearly always my go-to pick on this second point, because if your team can dedicate onto the low ground, you can keep that high ground, and high noon becomes nearly impossible for the enemies to stop. They have to have a diva in order to dive you, and when your tanks are also brawling on the point in matchmaking, it becomes very difficult for anyone to deal with. Just a side note also, sometimes what I do is I'll even set up a bastion behind a Rhine shield just on this point specifically for the exact same reason. They have to dedicate to the point, but you're a massive threat from the high ground. McCree and Soldier are both very good in this position, and McCree is a tier 1 pick for me, and I hope that you guys manage to land this too. I have to stress though that you do need to be hitting the shots, of course, because if you're stood up there whiffing, then your team are just getting no big DPS backup and you become a big detriment to the team. Now McCree is definitely more meta in matchmaking than he is at like the pro scene, and that's because of some of the positioning you can take. Well, you wouldn't be able to get away with it against organized against teams, but in matchmaking, sometimes you can. So I want to show you a game where I'm not necessarily hitting the best shots ever. I'm not the greatest aimer in the world. I go between some crispy headshots, and I will occasionally even fan the hammer when I stun a tracer just to make sure I get that kill. That's all personal preference, and I change my opinion on that like in-game as it goes on progressively. But I want to show you a Route 66 game right now because the start of it actually is the initial gameplay that I'm talking about. It's taking up on the high ground, take that position, making it very hard for the enemy team to dedicate to come and get you because my team are brawling on the point, and this is McCree in his prime. You can hit shots from a distance, and when that Winston does come and try and attack me, I make sure I bait out as much as I can so I can get most of his damage done through my ultimate, and then we can get back into the fight once more. I do stun the Lucio, and as I explained, I like to fan the hammer most of the time. If I can stun a tracer and I know I'll hit the headshot, then that's what I'll do. But I don't really care too much for style points, I just want the kill. So I wanted to show you this game specifically because I then go and do something that is a matchmaking play. I don't recommend this unless you think you're going to get away with it, and don't do this too much if you don't keep getting away with it. But I go off towards the enemy team to trickle them out, and I find the Ana off on her own. McCree's really good for little plays like this when they're not expecting it. You're only going to be able to do it once or twice throughout an entire match because they will obviously pick up exactly what you're trying to do eventually. In that situation against the Lucio, I probably should not have found the hammer and picked off a good headshot, but we did manage to kill him anyway. So once I go off for that flanky kill, which you can do occasionally as McCree, you want to be careful with your positioning from there on. You want to make sure you're with your team most of the time because not only are they creating space for you to hit shots, but you're also really good at defending your backline. In a second, after I whiff this Ana in a very glorious way, you'll see that the enemy Reaper actually is trying to duel me and the Mercy. Another thing McCree's good at on this high ground is Mercy can also fly to you and stay safe, as you'll see happens in just a second. Plays like this, where you're going in between defending your backline, trying to save your Mercy, are very important as McCree, because the more that you stay alive, the more that you can hit more shots and get more kills. If you're dead all the time in spawn, that's one of the biggest mistakes I see as McCree, where they're constantly trying to overcommit, because you will get away with flanky plays as McCree, but as soon as someone realizes you're doing that and they're good at the game, they will counter you in a very huge way. Now I'll throw in one little side note here, a little bit about aim and headshots and stuff with McCree, and don't be too concerned if you're not constantly hitting headshots. I have some games where I always do, and then other games I'll be hitting lots of body shots too. Lots of consistent body shots is fine. If you've got around a 50% accuracy, that's great. If you go much lower than that, then you do need to be careful of your aim because you aren't hitting enough shots, basically. Of course, it depends how much you're spamming Ryan Shields or Roadhogs or Divas or whatever it may be. That all varies depending on what the enemy team are playing. You don't necessarily have to always hit headshots, again, particularly in matchmaking. But the more headshots you hit, of course, the better. Now I want to move on to a couple of clips on King's Row, and these are different but interesting in their own ways. The first clip I'll show you is one where we actually end up losing the team fight, but I want to talk a little bit more about the positioning, but also how you can use cover to your advantage. In this little clip, I hit some nice crispy headshots, and nothing really comes of it. But if I slow this down for you guys, using a wall or cover is a massive advantage. As you'll see, I'm trying to hug to the left-hand side nearer to the wall as much as possible so that I can avoid the enemy Hanzo that's trying to shoot me. This way, anyone that I take a fight with on the right hand side of the wall is a much easier target for me to deal with because I'm under way less pressure. High ground is also good for this same reason because you can stand on high ground on any map and you can use that almost head glitch as cover to keep coming backwards and forwards so that you're way less exposed. I do this all the time in many of the clips you're watching throughout this. Another great example of this is any geometry in game, any cars in game, and even the payload itself. This isn't necessarily just a skill for McCree either, this is for every hero, and I may do an entire video on angles and payloads and all of these different ways of protecting yourself, because barriers are what you want if you've got a Reinhardt, but if you're still playing it in a dive comp situation and you want to play your McCree from the back line, you're going to need to use some kind of cover for your advantage, and sometimes that can be the payload. sometimes that can be a really long distance angle, just like in that King's Row example where I'm using the left hand wall to shield me from the Hanzo, which enables me to hit more shots. How we actually end up taking this point though is what I explained to you guys before. My team were dedicating to the fight in the middle and I decided to go on one of them flanks that I was talking about. These will catch enemies off guard in a big way. I was actually planning on coming around here and flanking with High Noon, which is really effective if you can pop it out at times, but I didn't actually need to. I managed to hit a really nice shot on the Mercy and a couple of really good shots on the Genji, and that was game over. But what's good about this clip is exactly what I was talking about a minute ago, and that is their McCree was actually on a mad flank trying to get that High Noon, but as you'll see, he didn't set up in time, he didn't pop off the High Noon, and he didn't get enough kills on our team, and he probably lost that point on his own for his team, because if he was in the back line there with the Mercy, was stood in front of the Mercy near the payload, giving me trouble, I can't hit the headshot on the Mercy. You see where I'm going with this. Your decision making with McCree is equally as important as hitting shots, because he's a very hard hero to position as, because he's very counterable with the very meta heroes that there are. So the decisions you're making change constantly throughout the whole game, and flanking actually should be maybe 20 or 30% of the time. Usually you want to be either defending the back line or in an off angle on some really nice high ground. The last clip we're going to go through is Horizon again, but on first point, and I want to show it because it shows all the examples of everything that I've been talking about thus far. My teammate jumps in my Winston, creating that space that I was talking about the whole time, which enables me and my team to hit some headshots. I stun and I fan the hammer on the Tracer. Tell me I'm bad in the comment section down below. I do swap up between fanning the hammer and hitting shots, and I do it again on the Lucio in a second, because once more the guy's weak, and he does this weird little bob with his head, which is really difficult to hit. Tracer doesn't always do that, and with McCree's new stunt, it makes it a little bit easier. But don't listen to people when they tell you have to do one or the other. You can make your mind up in each situation, and that should change all the time depending on where you stun them, how their head falls, are they falling out of the sky, or even just your confidence on that given specific day if you're hitting enough headshots or not. As you'll see in the gameplay as well, I'm just going back and forth. I'm changing up with the Lucio. We're going around the map, taking different positioning depending on where the enemy team are or where my team are. Don't overcommit to a fight when you don't need to as McCree, and you're already on your way to success. So much more of his kit is about being able to stay alive rather than just hitting headshots. It's almost second to that. They both come hand in hand, but I think the positioning part of him is often overlooked. And yes, I did just fan the hammer on the Tracer again, but she died every time, so it's fine. I hope this helped you guys out. Let me know in the comment section if I missed anything. Remember, we have all kinds of accuracy and aim guides on the channel already. Be sure to check out our Twitter and our Discord, where you guys can find the McCree main of your dreams. Be sure to hit that bell icon so you guys get notified when our videos go live. Be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and have a great day as always. Take care and peace, people.